Hi there VC, Steve Whitty here, Sunday morning, time for another video. Hope everyone's well. I'm full of joys of spring at the moment. Just been out and had my my hours worth of exercise. I went for a walk. I think I've mentioned it before, I'm quite lucky. I've got a little bit of a park just literally 2 or 3 minutes away from where I live. Go out the door onto the cycle pathway. I can walk all the way up to Pens Hall, which is a good 50 half hour's walk away using the path, and then walk back. So that's my hour's walk. Weather's good, I'm happy. That's important. I hope you're happy as well. This video is, I'm sort of like following it's something I've always wanted to do. I'm just going to start listing my 100 favourite albums. Now I've known that at least a few others have done this. Steve Carlson, Dean, Grandma's Handbag, and Graham Crackling Vinyl. And Graham's just started his, and I think taking advantage of the time, we've got a bit of time off work. Well, not off work, but working from home, so we're not doing the commute. Got a bit more time on our hands to think about these lists. So here goes. So this video is listing 100 to 91. And the one thing I'm going to stress is that not the best albums, 100 best albums ever made. They're my 100 favourite albums. So let's start at number 100. And this is Infinity by Journey. Released in 1978. It was the band's 4th studio album, but it was the first with Steve Perry. The album itself was produced by Roy Thomas Baker. The reason that I think Journey at that time, Greg Rowley was doing the vocals, but he was stuck behind his keyboard bank, and it didn't give the band much of a focus. And so the band itself wanted a strong lead singer to share the vocal duties initially. Initially they tried Robert Fleischman, but that didn't work. Clashes with management, clashes with band. So they eventually ended up with Steve Perry. And I think it showed that the band wanted to move towards a more mainstream band, moving towards a more mainstream band. I think getting Roy Thomas Baker in as producer, he'd obviously had a lot of success with Queen. And this, you can tell this, why it starts to move away from the previous album, where there's not so much instrumental. There's a heavy more thought on the songs, and you've got it with the key tracks on here. Wheels in the Sky, which was the hit single in the US, Anytime, and Light are my favourite tracks on this album. Light's particularly is evocative. When if I'm lucky enough to have been flying somewhere and it's in the middle of the night, I can just see the lights on the ground. It's always the song that comes into my mind. It worked commercially as well. This reached number 21 in the Billboard 200. However, there is one caveat to this. This would be the last album to feature Aynsley Dunbar on drums. He was quite keen to move towards a more commercial sound, but suddenly found it wasn't quite to his taste. Now, whether he left or whether he got booted out, I don't know. So in the end, this sort of crosses an era. It was an end of one era, moving into another era, but Aynsley Dunbar decided to go, and he went on to join Jefferson Starship at that point. My copy, you can see there's a demo record. It's not red, but it's also, I'll get it out, on Red Columbia label, so it's an American copy. There is a song on here called Patiently. Now, this was written it was dedicated to the Lynyrd Skynyrd, members of Lynyrd Skynyrd. Well, it dedicated to Lynyrd Skynyrd, full stop. During recording this album, they had the plane crash which killed 3 members of the band. But overall, the reason I like this album is that this melodic sound. You can pinpoint the journey they're about to go on with the more commercial side of things. At number 99, I've gone for Medal by Pink Floyd, sixth album, released in 1971, and this is really the transitional album. At the time of recording, the band had no material, but more importantly, they'd lost direction a little bit. And you could say almost this is probably one of the last albums where they put together, where it was very much a group effort. Lyrically, it was. And the band spent a lot of time, lots of experimenting. A lot of time spent on this album, a lot of experimentation going on. Very little got done, but what did happen, they just managed to put things together. It certainly is a more cohesive sounding album than, say, Atom Heart Mother. Key tracks, one of these days, the instrumental opener, is just a great opening track on there. Fearless, where they use the football crowd as well, and the Mighty Echoes, which takes up side 2. Absolutely wonderful absolutely wonderful album, wonderful track, wonderful album. It's getting a new lease of life, parts of it, because Nick Mason used Saucer Full of Secrets. So that's my number 99. Number 99. Number 98, Bebop Deluxe, Futurama. Released in 1975. It was the band's second studio album. It was also the first to feature the new lineup, which has Bill Nelson on guitar and keyboards, vocals, Charlie Tumurai on bass and backing vocals, and Simon Cox on drums. And the second album in the list has been produced by Roy Thomas Baker. This is a real mix of styles. It moves on from the debut album, Axe Victim. And I think one of Bill Nelson's strong points is he's always looking forward, and he realised at the band he had with the opening album weren't going to cut the mustard, so he split the band up basically. I think he was persuaded to do putting together a new lineup to stop him going solo. But what this album does is highlights the complexity and diversity of Bill Nelson's playing. Made in Heaven, Sister Seagull, great tracks. Made in Heaven ended up being a hit single in '76. A year later, it was put on a EP. It was the lead track of it, and I think I do remember Pan's People dancing to that on Top of the Pops. Really, yeah, and just an excellent band. Bebop Deluxe. It's, you know, I think if you know, certain bands worth checking out, that is one of them. Number 97, Skids, Days in Europa, released in 1979. It was their second studio album. And moving on from Bebop Deluxe, this was produced by Bill Nelson, who also played the keyboards on the album. The band was now a three-piece, with Rusty Egan playing on drums. I think there are a few things thrown at Nelson that he took away some of the rougher edges of the band. It become a bit more. It almost become like Bebop Deluxe without him playing, which is not a bad thing actually. I think it's certainly is a continuation, probably what he wanted for Red Noise, and he probably found it more with producing Skids. Key tracks on here: the opening track, Animation. Then you've got, there's the, if I pronounce this right, Dulce et decorum est per patria more, and it's basically Latin. It is a sweet and glorious thing to die for one's country, and that comes from a poem from Wilfred Owen. And then you've got Working for the Yankee Dollar, which was a single towards the end of 1979. The actual album itself, this is an original cover, and it was deemed too controversial. This very much harks to sort of like Rennie Riefenstahl Olympiad era of Germany. And you've got the Gothic lettering there. If you don't know who Rennie Riefenstahl was, he was Hitler's favourite filmmaker. Triumph of the Will and Olympiad examples of her work. So this album got withdrawn and reissued in 1980 with a different sleeve and some of the tracks remixed. And I think they've also put Masquerade on it as well, which was more aimed at for the US market. Though if you can get a copy of this, this is really just a really good album. It's hinting of moving away from the new punk new wave towards edging towards what the 80s was going to sound like. At 96, Roxy Music, debut album from 1972, produced by Peter Sinfield, who had just left King Crimson at the time. This album just oozes, it's future sounding, yet it harks back to the past. I've written down it off its time, yet rooted in the past. And you got the band there, and you've got there on bass Graham Simpson, who left pretty soon after recording the album. He was, I think, dabbling in too many hallucinogenics and whatever, and sort of fell off the radar a little bit. The songs you've got, and when it's harking back to past, the opening track, remake, remodel, when the band do their instrumental solo pieces, the bass solos, Day Tripper, the guitar is Peter Gunn. And there's some of the imageries in there. The band shouts CPL 593H. That's a license plate, apparently, of a car that Ferry spotted being driven by a beautiful woman. So whether, you know, he was smitten by this woman and just thought that was unattainable, but remembered the number. A lot of the songs in this album are linked to movies. 2HB is Humphrey Bogart, and he mentions the line, "Here's looking at you, kid." Chance Meeting is inspired by the British movie Brief Encounter, and The Bob by the film Battle of Britain. It's achingly at times beautiful when you've got the Ladytron, when it drifts into the oboe solo, then leads into the guitar, remake, remodel, and then the thing that probably Roxy Music became well known for was the covers. Carrie Ann Muller is, I think, the woman, the model on the cover here. She ended up becoming Mrs. Chris, married Mick Jagger's brother, Chris. Yes, this is the 2017, 2018 reissue. I wasn't too impressed with the sound of this. I'm looking for a better copy, but it's still a classic album. At 95, the Smiths' The Queen is Dead. Their third solo album, a studio album from 1986. Very much their creative peak, in my opinion. The songs had all pretty much been written. Johnny Marr had written most of the songs on the road, using Andy Rourke and Mike Joyce to work out the arrangements. The actual title of the album itself comes from the novel Last Exit to Brooklyn. Lyrically, Morrissey was really at his sharpest. Obviously, the title "The Queen is Dead" got picked up on, and it got a lot of flack for it, and sort of highlights events such like breaking into the palace, where a few years ago somebody did actually break into the guy called Michael Fagan broke into Buckingham Palace and was sitting at the end of the Queen's bed. You know, you sort of laugh about it now, but it was probably frightening at the time. The song "Frankly, Mr. Shankly" was a dig at Jeff Travis, the label boss at Rough Trade, and And Travis admits that he'd written Morrissey a poem, and hence the line, "You write such awful poetry, you write such bloody awful poetry," came from. There is the song "There Is a Light That Never Goes Out." Morrissey goes back to one of his first loves, the New York Dolls. He uses a few lyrics from Lonely Planet Boy on that. Morrissey, I think, has a soft spot that might have a soft spot for the album. He definitely says "The Boy with the Thorn in His Side" was his favourite Smith song. It's one of my favourite Smith songs, to be quite honest. There is some humour in here. I think Morrissey's become quite a divisive character now, but at the time, you could see lyrically there were he'd been ambiguous with his lyrics, but there was a fair bit of humour in there. Cemetery Gates, Vicar in a Tutu, just the imagery in itself. And as I said, I think this really marked him at, as I said, at the peak. I think when you listen to Strange Ways Here You Come, you could now listen to it the hindsight of the band that was falling apart a little bit. But yeah, that's that. At 94, I've gone for Cheap Trick Dream Police. Fourth studio album released in 1975. Produced by Tom Vernon, I think. Yeah, Tom Vernon. This was their most commercially successful album. It reached number 6 in the Billboard 200. This album saw the band sort of shift towards more complex songs with orchestration on several of the tracks. And I think one of the reasons this sort of got picked up successfully, it really latched onto the surprise success of Cheap Trick at Budokan. It was a surprise, and in fact, that success delayed the release of this album. Harvey Spinning the Black Circle lightens these to be as good as songwriters as the Beatles, and I can see why. You've got commercial hooks. The title track "Dream Police" is just such a hook that drives you in. "The Way of the World," it's probably that's my favourite Cheap Trick song. Then "Gonna Raise Hell," and then at the end you've got "Need Your Love," where it just builds up right there in the end track, and it was featured on like the Budokan, I think, at the Budokan, and it's just absolute corky. There's so many layers to this than just a pop album. This was a band that was really on top of its game and felt confident in its own abilities to take their sound further. Yeah, corking album. At 93, sensational Alex Harvey Band, Next. 1973, it was the second album released in 1973. Theatrical. It's a loud album. I didn't realise how loud it was until I was listening to it a few days ago. What makes this album so great is it's the performance. There's so much showmanship in this performance. The album was actually produced by Phil Wyman, who was having success producing Sweet. But you listen to this album, tracks like Faith Fever, Next, Vambo, Marble Eyes, and you can imagine when you listen to it, Alex Harvey on stage performing, being all theatrical. The band were very theatrical. You've got Zal Clemenson. He's got his clown makeup on. Alex Harvey was always known to dress up. The rest of the band all sort of like assumed characters on there. Absolutely wonderful. Not for mixture of covers. So "Giddy Up a Ding Dong" was the first single off the album. Next, the Jack Brel song. But then "Bay Feeler" is probably the best song on this album. It used to open the songs. It just builds up with the keyboard, and then the guitar just strumming in, and then the crash of the drums, and Alex Harvey just sort of singing, and shouting, imploring, "Can he put your hands on you?" And it's just absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful song. Absolutely wonderful album. 92, Paranoid by Black Sabbath. It's the band's second album from 1970. Probably to a lot of people their standout album. And it's full of iconic tracks that they were performing live. Produced by Roger Bain. The band had the luxury of having a bit more time and they did on the debut album. I think the debut album, Black Sabbath album, was recorded pretty much in a day. I think they had a few more days, they had a week to put this album together. There's more to this album than just heavy music. Yes, you've got like War Pigs, which was going to be the original album title. They're going to call that War Pigs, where Geezer Butler, he wrote the lyrics, and it's always said that he was the member of the band. He was into the horror, but he was also clued up what was going on in the world. You know, Vietnam was going on. You know, I think it was nasty world out there at the time. You've also got, I might as well show you, my copy is Vertigo Swirl. We've also got on here Planet Caravan, which in its own way it's a lot softer than any of the other tracks on there, but it's in its own way more just as eerie. They recorded Ozzy through a speaker cabinet, then mixed it through an oscillator, or as the band looked like, I didn't know what it was, but it looked like a fridge with a knob on it, and it sort of it plays with Ozzy's voice. But yeah, really eerie sounding song. Iron Man, with that distorted vocal shouting "I am Iron Man." And probably the best known song, Paranoid, the surprise hit single, reached number 4 in the UK charts in 1970. It was written in 25 minutes. The band realised they didn't have enough material to make an album, and so they decided Tony only came up with the riff. Bill crashed in on drums. Ozzy put together a melody, and Geezer put the words together. 25 minutes recorded on the album, surprise hit single. The album itself reached number 1 in the UK. It was their, until the release of 13, their only number 1 album in the UK. Yes, it's one of those heavy metal defining albums, but the reason it's so good is because it's more to it than heavy metal. And at 91, I suppose an album that defines prog. This is King Crimson in the Court of the Crimson King, released in 1969. It is, I suppose, the album that defines for a lot of people prog rock. This is my copy. I've got 2 copies of this actually. This is a Pink Label Island Dot. I'm not sure if this is the second issue actually. It's just a wonderful mixture of blues mixed with jazz, classical and symphonic music. Initially when they came to record the album, they were working with Tony Clark, who'd been producing the Moody Blues. However, it weren't working, and more probably as a product of its time, and quite amazingly now you get a band on a debut album was allowed to produce themselves. So each had their own section. It sort of worked together. Ian MacDonald did with his Mellotron, Robert Fripp with his guitar, and Greg Lake with his vocals. You've got 21st century Schizoid Man. It's just edgy. It's jagged. It sounds rough. It sounds frightening as well. It sort of mirrors the image on the actual album sleeve. Then when the album closes to the wonderful lush sounds of you know, the Court of the Crimson King. It's just absolutely wonderful. And that was a McDonald. And the thing, the beauty of this album, you look at the credits. In fact, it's Ian McDonald did a lot of this, but it was very much a group effort. Everybody, and they had Pete Sinfield on doing the lyrics as well. Very much a group effort here. The actual sleeve, obviously, you can't go about this album without looking at the sleeve. It was designed by a guy called Barry Godber. It was the only album cover he ever did. Unfortunately, I think 23 or 24, he passed away in 1970 from a heart attack. Fripp owns the original. Fripp owns the original painting. He's got that at home. But just the iconic sleeve. Then obviously you've got the cover in the cover there. A wonderful genre-defining album. It was a very successful album. It reached number 5 in the UK and number 28 in the US. However, I think the band hadn't played that many gigs, and they were very, very, I would say, green. I think the second or third gig they played was Hyde Park to a quarter of a million people. But they sort of felt burnt out a little bit, and pretty much McDonald and Giles left after they'd done the tour and did their own album, which didn't do as well. And then Greg Lake, we all know, went off and formed ELP with Keith Emerson and Carl Palmer. Robert Fripp carried on. King Crimson, he's carrying on now. But at 91, this is just a defining album. So there you go, VC. That's the first part, 91 to 100. I'd be interested to know what you think. If you're, have you ever thought about doing a list yourself? If you're new to the channel and you like what you see, just click on the subscribe button. It's all, I do appreciate it. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Love the interaction. I'm going to need to have another swig before my throat gives away. Feel free to leave a comment. I will get back to you. I know I've got a couple of comments I've got to reply on. So whatever you get up to this Sunday, VC, make sure it's a good one and you're looking after yourselves. We'll get there in the end. We'll get there. So until the next video, VC, take care of yourselves. Keep spinning. More importantly, keep smiling.